Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the public hearing of the Planning and Zoning Commission for Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021. If all could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. At this time, I'll turn to our interim secretary to read the public notice.
Notice is hereby given that there will be a public hearing on Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers of the South Windsor Town Hall to consider the following. Number 1, application 21-27P, UW Realty, the 7th LLC, request for a zone change of 33,750 square foot from industrial to general commercial on property located at 140 Troy Road, industrial zone. Application 2, 21-28P, UW Realty, the 7th LLC, request for a special exception to table 4.1.1A and site plan of development for a duplex on property located at 140 Troy Road, general commercial zone. Application 21-21P, Town of South Windsor, Pleasant Valley Elementary School, request for a special exception to table 3.1.1A and site plan of development for a new 102,150 square foot elementary school on property located at 591, 623, and 647 Ellington Road, rural residential zone. This was continued from June 8th, 2021. Should I mention it's been continued, or?
After you finish, I'll just...
Okay. To view this meeting, please tune into channel 16 if your provider is Cox Cable, or channel 6082 if your provider is Frontier, or go to gmedia.swagat.com/live. Copies of the application are on file in the office of the town clerk and the planning department, and online at southwindsor-ct.gov/planning-department/pages/planning-and-zoning commission-applications. At this hearing, interested persons may be heard by calling into the meeting, and written comments by the public will be received by mail or email to planningzoningcomments@southwindsor-ct.gov. Persons who may require an accommodation can contact staff Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at 860-644-2511, extension 329, Bart Pesaconis, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Our third application for the public hearing, the Town of South Windsor Pleasant Valley School, has been postponed at the applicant's request, and the continuation date will be July 13th. We have a little housekeeping. We have 2 commissioners that are missing out tonight. So we will be seating our alternates. The Commissioner Powell will be seated for Commissioner Bonzani, and Commissioner Bernstein will be seated for Commissioner Foley. Our order of business tonight will be first to hear from the applicants, then we will hear from town staff, then we will hear from members of the public, first those in favor and then those against, and then we will hear from commissioners. At this time, I will call our first applicant, application 21-27P, UW Realty 7 LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Ben Wheeler from Design Professionals located here in South Windsor. I am a licensed landscape architect in the state of Connecticut. Here representing the applicant, UW Realty 7 LLC, who is, it's people that you're familiar with, Mr. Bob Urso, who I have with me this evening, and his business partner, Brad Wainman, who cannot make it tonight. Also with us is John Jakes of Jakes Construction. All of you know well in town, who's been a builder in town for a long period of time. John and UW Realty 7 LLC have come to an agreement, should this application and the subsequent application get approved, that he would be the builder on this property, and he also intends to own it himself and also rent it out at that point in time. So if there's any questions about the actual, when we get to that application, if we get to that application about the actual building, John can help answer those questions as well. So this is on the property known as 140 Troy Road, which is 33,750 square feet, or just over 3/4 of an acre. Currently, the property is in the industrial zone. Not too long ago, the property was in the general commercial zone, and it received a zone change to the industrial zone back in 2018, which I'm sure many of you remember. Subsequent to that, site plans were prepared and approved by this commission for a construction company to go on that site. Those plans never went forward. The property subsequently hit the market earlier this year, that when UW Realty 7 purchased it. But that site plan that was approved is still in effect because it has occurred within the last 5 years. To the east of this property, it is zoned A30, a single-family residential zone. That also, there's 3 lots there that recently received a zone change back in 2019. Again, those properties used to be in the general commercial zone as well. Across the street, across Troy Road to the north, is a rural residential zone, and then there is existing general commercial zone to the south of this subject property, which is the Imperial Oil Building that has access on Sullivan Avenue. And then to the west of this property is also the industrial zone. The immediate abutting property owner is the Boatworks property, which again has its main access on Sullivan Avenue. The applicant is requesting a zone change back to the general commercial zone, but the intent is not to build a commercial use, but for a residential duplex, which is allowed in the general commercial zone. The applicant, as you know and was read for the agenda tonight, has concurrently submitted an application for a site plan special exception for a duplex on the subject property to further prove that the intent here is to have a residential use instead of a commercial use on the property. And certainly this would be an opportunity to provide a couple of units of more reasonably priced housing that would be available to the town of South Windsor. This zone change would not allow for any development. If it were a zone change to a residential zone, whether it be A30 like is abutting us to the east, or to the rural residential zone across the street, it would not allow for any development on the property without a variance. The reason for that is the lot is only 150 feet deep, and both of those zones require a 50-foot front yard, a 50-foot rear yard, and then also a 50-foot buffer. So per your regulations, with a lot that's only 150 feet deep, that basically, eliminates any development potential if it were rezoned to any of those single-family residential zones, the abutting residential zones, A30 or rural residential, again, without a variance. So that's why we felt the best approach, because it is allowed in the general commercial zone, is to rezone back to what it was before, with the intent of putting a duplex building on this lot. If this zone change is approved, what that does is the buffer that would be required on the south side of the property abutting the general commercial, if it were in the residential zone, then shifts to the eastern property line, because you'll have general commercial adjacent to the residential. And because the lot is much wider than it is deep, the lot can accommodate that buffer switch. Now, obviously, Troy Road is residential in nature. All the existing buildings on Troy Road are residential in nature. even though to the west of this property, there are industrial properties that do come up to Troy Road. None of those properties have main access onto Troy Road. So the intent of this is to maintain the residential character of Troy Road. And certainly, and I know we're just discussing the zone change at this point, but there are in the regulations criteria for the development of a duplex in any zone. And one thing that is discussed in that section of the regulations is providing a transition between residential zones and commercial. And because we have residential, rural residential to the north, A30 to the east, general commercial to the south, and industrial to the west, this would provide the perfect transition in between the residential uses and zones and the commercial or industrial zones to the west of us. The zoning regulations, as you know, have 14 criteria for reviewing a zone change request. We submitted, along with this application, a written narrative which outlines our response to each of those 14 criteria. We believe that all of those criteria are met as outlined in that document. In the interest of time, I won't go through that entire document, but I do want to highlight that it's consistent with the Plan of Conservation and Development, which does talk about providing reasonably priced housing and also providing transitions in between the residential uses and commercial uses. So we do feel that this zone change is warranted. Again, it used to be in the general commercial zone, so we're just trying to go back to that, but not for a commercial use, but to put a residential use on this property. So with that, I will conclude my presentation and am available should you have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'll turn to our town staff, our Director of Planning, Michelle Lipe.
Thank you. This is a request for a zone change of approximately 0.75 acres from industrial to general commercial zone on property located south side of Troy Road, westerly of Brookfield Street at 140 Troy Road. Property is currently bordered by industrial zone to the west, general commercial to the south, and residential to the north and to the east. Minimum lot size in this zone is the same as in the industrial zone, requiring 30,000 square feet. Frontage requirement is the same for both zones. Primary difference in the bulk requirements is the front yard setback, requiring 35 feet in the industrial zone and 25 feet of rear yard setback. General commercial zone, you're required to go 50 feet. The history on this property was, it was originally rezoned from general commercial to industrial to accommodate a contractor who came in and got an approval in 2018. That project never went forward. They're looking to rezone it back, and as indicated, they'd like to use it for a special exception use to have a duplex. General commercial zoning does allow for things like retail, office, warehousing, different, a variety of uses that when you rezone it, it possibly could come in through a site plan approval process. Your industrial zone has more of the industrial type uses. As indicated by Mr. Wheeler, they did submit the document indicating how they feel it meets the zone change requirements. There is public well available there and public sewer available. It did recently got WPCA approval when it was an industrial building, so it has received approval previously. There aren't any wetlands on the property. It would receive a conservation approval if needed, if it disturbed over half acre of land. The zone change is a time to discuss traffic impacts, with Troy Road being a collector road. This would very easily accommodate any use proposed on this small lot. Site plan of development is required before any commercial or special exception use can be built. If the zone change is approved, the commission must state on the record how they found the zone change to be consistent with the plan of conservation and development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you. I have no comments on the zone change application.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I will turn to members of the public, but first, I do want to make note of a petition we have received here. I believe it was received on the 22nd, June 22nd. And if I could ask our interim secretary to read it, please.
Petition submitted to South Windsor Planning and Zoning regarding the following applications, application 21-27P and application 21-28P for UW Realty 7 LLC. Reference application 21-27P, request for a zone change of 33,750 square foot from industrial to general commercial on property located at 140 Troy Road Industrial Zone, and application 21-28, request for a special exception to table 4.1.1A and site plan of development for a duplex on property located at 140 Troy Road General Commercial Zone. Dear Chairman Pasaconis, the undersigned property owners are all situated in the immediate vicinity of the above referenced applications. We strenuously object to the requested zone change as it constitutes a veiled but very clear attempt to implement a, quote, spot zone, end quote, for the sole benefit of owners of property situated at 140 Troy Road, South Windsor, Connecticut. We are certain that the Commission understands the definition of spot zoning, so that the record is clear. It is the application of zoning to a specific parcel of land within a larger zoned area when the rezoning is at odds with a town's master plan of development and current zoning restrictions. The requested spot zoning in this instance should be ruled invalid and denied by the Commission, as it clearly constitutes an arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable treatment of a limited parcel of land by a local zoning ordinance. While zoning regulates the land use in whole districts, spot zoning makes unjustified exceptions for a parcel or parcels within a district. The small size of this parcel is not the sole defining characteristic of a spot zone. Rather, the defining characteristic is the narrowness and unjustified nature of the benefit to the particular property owner, to the detriment of the town's general land use plan and the public goals. The requested rezoning would provide this applicant with an unjustified special treatment that solely benefits only this particular owner, while undermining the pre-existing rights and uses of adjacent property owners. There is no other way to describe the requested action other than spot zoning. Based on the foregoing, we respectfully request that this application be unanimously denied. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 signatures, and they are in script. It would be difficult to really read their names, Michelle, unless you have them. But I have addresses if you want me to read those. Yes?
I have some names off of the map, but I don't have 100% of the names.
Okay. Well, I guess we can have it up for.
Yeah, we can figure out who
review
they are
if
based
anybody
on,
wants to
yeah,
see it.
we'll look at the town record.
Okay, now, this adds a little bit to the application, as I believe we now have to determine whether or not this constitutes 20% of the,
Yeah,
20%?
You have to determine that 20% of the ownership of the land within there, if there's a petition is signed by 20% of the people that own that land, then you have it to force a 2/3 majority vote to get a zone change.
Okay,
So we really do need to, because there are several people that are on the 500-foot radius list, but we would have to calculate out.
and we also have the added point that some people sign twice
Yeah,
from
right,
a
from the same
particular address.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So like our,
Just to point out to the commission members, that's why we require the applicant to provide for us how much acreage each individual owns within 500 feet of this parcel. So on your key map, you'll see an acreage associated with every name. So if the person signs a petition and the total of the acreage equals at least 20% or more, then you would be required to do a 2/3 majority vote to approve it. So we do need to calculate it.
so it would, if there's 20% or more, then they would need a supermajority of 2/3 of our commissioners to approve the application versus just a majority, a simple majority. Okay?
So I didn't understand what the 20% was 20% of.
20% of the neighboring
You
properties.
take the 500-foot radius, and you get 20% of that land, and you come up what that acreage is. And then you add the people who signed the petition. If you equal that acreage or exceed it, you're required to have a 2/3 majority.
So it's,
So
I have a property, it looks like I have a husband and wife signing here, or
right.
two people living at the same address, that counts as one?
Their acreage counts as the single acreage, correct?
Okay.
Yep, yep. If you own a lot of acreage, obviously your signature has more influence than if you own a little bit of acreage towards the whole.
And
Okay.
I guess you don't yet know if we met the 20%?
We just received this, so we'll have to take a look at it and validate the ownership and find out the acreage, so we could try to attempt to do it now, or we could, but I really can't validate ownership too well without having access to other records, so probably have to hold the hearing open to have us at least report back on this aspect.
Okay. And this application also ties into the next application also. But at this time, we will move forward with this application, and we are at public input. So if there is anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this application, please step forward. And I'll remind anybody that we do have a sign-in sheet at the podium. Anybody want to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none, is there anyone who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns about this application they'd like to address the commission? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, I will turn to commissioners. I'll turn to Commissioner LeBlanc first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions, but I am concerned regarding this application. I drove through here, and I took a look at the neighborhood and what's around there and everything, and I don't feel it's a necessary project, and I don't feel it's a necessity for the town. I try to look at the greater good of these projects, and these can come before us, and other than a benefit for an individual party, I don't see the benefit for the neighbors around here. We have a petition signed by several people saying that they're against this sort of thing. So I'm taking the stance that I'm signing with them. I don't think a zone change is warranted for this. This is my opinion, and I'm sticking with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Flagg.
They mentioned spot zoning here. Michelle, is there any other place in town that you know of that has spot zoning like this?
Well, my understanding of spot zoning is probably a little bit different. You are adjacent to a general commercial zone, so this is not, spot zoning to me is when you are in the middle of an industrial area and you plop something in the middle of it different. This does have the zone they're requesting adjacent to it, so you're building your general commercial zone from that aspect. So, you know, probably the closest thing we do to spot zoning is when we do our DRZs or design residence developments, where we go and we do a zone change in the middle of an area. But again, we do a large enough area of land that it's not considered spot zoning. So I wouldn't consider this request a spot zoning request from that perspective.
Just because there's similar uses.
It is adjacent to a general commercial use, so you could, in theory, dissolve a lot line, for example, and build on that general commercial use. I would just comment one thing about it being a residential zone. If it were to go to an A30 zone, let's say, you do have a requirement of a buffer that would be difficult to meet. You'd have to seek a ZBA variance for that. But you could still propose a duplex. It would still meet the requirements for a duplex. So that could be proposed in a general commercial zone or in a residential zone when you're adjacent to a commercial zone.
Does that help you, Bill?
Yeah, And we couldn't change that to residential because there isn't enough room for a buffer on the property, is that it?
Yeah, when you have a residential zone up against a commercial zone, you're required a 50-foot buffer, and then you have your 50-foot rear yard, and then you have a 50-foot front yard, and as I think they indicated, it's 150 feet deep, so you wouldn't have a room for a house. So that, would it be a classic case for a hardship on a property? Probably. You know, ZBA could grant a variance to allow you to reduce a buffer.
All right. I do have some feeling for the residents that are around there that are objecting to this, though. And I drive through there all the time, and it is all houses across the street and there's houses next to it on one side. And the side that doesn't have houses, after this plot right here, there is not that much room to put anything else. So anyway, all right, you've answered all my questions anyway. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Dexter.
Just a couple of comments. Whenever I hear about the loss of industrial acreage anywhere in town, my red flag goes up because we never make any more industrial acreage. Once it's gone, it's gone. But as in 2018, this was a general commercial site. So in the Plan of Conservation and Development, only 12% of the South Windsor land is either one, commercial or industrial. So it's important we keep that flavor of that property. So, you know, if a small business were to go in there where they might live on top, I might be a little more excited about this change. When you say, Ben, you know, reasonably priced housing, is the applicant suggesting affordable housing in this duplex by chance?
No, they are not.
Okay.
Like, just by the nature that it's 2 units in one building, that's all we're suggesting.
Less expensive than a single family?
Than a single-family
I
home,
got it.
correct.
Okay. I'm not sure how I feel. I know it's going to be held over, so I'm still working on it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wagner.
I guess technically there's an adjacent general commercial zone, but it's actually in the backyard, right? The back property line where it's adjacent, not like to the left or right on the street.
Correct, it's immediately like south of it, yeah.
And then the only reason that they even need to worry about a zone change is because the lot isn't big enough for a duplex or any other residence in the A30 zone, or why is it that they need, I don't understand why they actually think they need a zone change in order to build a duplex, which is allowed here anyway.
It's not allowed in the industrial zone, which is what's currently zoned.
Oh, it's currently industrial.
It's currently industrially zoned, correct. So the choice was to go to a general commercial zone or to go to, like, say, an A zone, A30 zone.
So if we go general commercial, the next door property is A30, correct?
Correct, but if you recall, in the recent past, it was not. You had a row of general commercial there back in 2018. And actually what got this text amendment put in place to allow for a duplex in the general commercial zone was the previous developer who owned that general commercial land. Then he came in and rezoned it to residential. And then you got 3 residential lots along Troy Road, if you recall. This lot here was adjacent to a significant chunk of general commercial land until it was rezoned. You rezoned this specifically because you had a contractor who didn't meet the general commercial requirements, wanted to put a small business in.
I'm having trouble understanding it with all the barriers and mass and everything.
I'm sorry. You had rezoned it at the time. You had a contractor that was going to put an office in there, a small office contracting business.
In 140.
At 140, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of buffer are they required to have if they go to general commercial and there's an A door?
They have 50-foot buffer against the residential property, which again, the property's wide, so they can accommodate that.
But they can't accommodate it if we made it an A30 and had a buffer on the industrial side.
Because the buffer would be to the south and to the west in that situation. You'd have two buffers. You'd have two property lines abutting commercial properties.
So the only reason that they need the zone change is because of buffers?
Well, I guess I'd let the applicant answer that, but
Well,
that's
also, they got an industrial property that,
yeah, short of getting variances from the ZBA, I think this was the easier course. Am I right, Ben?
Right, so there's two reasons for the zone change. The first is, again, just as a reminder, it is currently zoned industrial. This commission zone changed it from general commercial to industrial back in 2018. So it is currently an industrial use. As we pointed out, it's or an industrial zone. An industrial zone with its only access on Troy Road, which is primarily a residential street, as a couple of you have pointed out. So that's why we feel a duplex would be a good use for this property to maintain the residential character of the road. So, as Michelle pointed out, a duplex is not allowed in the industrial zone, so therefore a zone change is required. When we spoke with staff, before we submitted this application, we had discussed submitting a zone change to a residential zone. But as we've pointed out, that because of the restriction on the depth of the lot, whether it's a duplex or a single-family home, based on the regulations, it allows for zero room for development on this lot without going to the Zoning Board of Appeals and getting a variance.
the variance would not be, you wouldn't even be able to get a variance if it remained industrial, is that probably true, or?
Well, again, the duplex is not allowed in the industrial. So in order to put a residential use on this property, I believe, Michelle can correct me if I'm wrong, there's one of two ways you can do that. One is to have a caretaker that's an owner of the business live on that property, but then you have the industrial use with it, which, as all of you know, can operate 24/7. There's no restrictions on that. Actually, no, that is the only way that you can have a residential use in the industrial zone.
Yeah, but
right?
a use variance would be the only other option,
Right.
which we wouldn't encourage.
If we changed it to, okay, are they allowed to do a use variance at this time? I mean, ZBA,
Yeah, there's some restriction, but there's use variances that are permitted.
okay. Now, if we changed you to A30, you'd need a variance because of the buffers, because you don't have enough room.
Correct.
Yeah, I think I understand.
Yeah, certainly it is a little confusing because we are proposing to go to a commercial zone, but I think the important thing to remember is that even though we're proposing to go to a commercial zone, ultimately the intent is to put a residential use on this. Again, there's no other commercial properties on Troy Road that have access directly on Troy Road, so.
I mean, I guess the trouble I'm having is I actually like the idea of building duplexes here and there. You know, it's consistent with making housing more affordable if it's not truly affordable housing. But I'm just a little nervous about, you know, this kind of a zone change for the purpose of avoiding the buffers that we normally have in residential zones to build a residential property. That's what's bothering me right now, so. But that's all I have, thank you.
Okay,
Well,
Commissioner,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but if I could add to that, Michelle may correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe buffers apply to zones or uses. Is that correct? So the abutting general commercial zone would have a buffer?
Both sides, excuse me, both sides of the zone line would have a buffer, that's correct. Is that what you mean?
No, if this zone change were granted, the abutting property to the south would also be general commercial. So the subject property would not be subject to a buffer, but
I'm sorry, you're
other
correct.
property would, because it would be a residential use on the property.
No, you wouldn't have a
It's based
requirement.
just on zone, not use.
Yeah, you're thinking
Okay.
of a non-residential use in a residential zone. We have
Okay.
a provision for it.
I stand corrected.
So this is not a if we put a residence in a general commercial zone, it's a conforming use?
It's a special exception.
A duplex by special exception. A single-family home is not permitted.
So we're not creating a non-conforming, what's called a non-conforming use there, because it's allowed as a duplex.
No, but what you're really doing is you're creating a zoning the property general commercial, and then you've got your uses that anybody could come in with. They're choosing to come in with a duplex use, but you're first and foremost rezoning it as a general commercial piece of property.
Right, there are like 3 ways you can do a duplex, and one of them is what we're doing here, the middle.
Correct.
Right.
This would get you to a duplex. Yep.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Bernstein?
I'm going to start by picking up on something that Commissioner Wagner said, and that is, we have communication challenges in this room between these glass and the acoustics and such, so when people speak, if they could project and speak loud through their masks, that would be appreciated. Michelle, unfortunately, there's a lot that you went over in your overview that I missed, so I may end up asking you questions that you've already addressed. Am I correct in assuming that no one representing this petition is in the room here? That's what I thought. I would like to understand, and maybe Mr. Chairman or Michelle, how are these folks being harmed? It's not clear to me how they believe they're being harmed. Are you able to help me understand that?
You would have to ask them directly. I can't
Yeah,
speak
okay.
for them. You know, if you read the petition, I believe they feel that something's happening, and
Okay,
they're not comfortable with it. That's what I get from it.
okay, and that's what I get from it. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything, and I guess as part of that, no pun intended, Michelle, hate to put you on the spot, does your department have a point of view on this document and what they're saying?
I think I expressed just earlier that spot zoning to me has a different connotation than how they're using it there.
Okay,
So I would not consider this a spot zoning application.
all right, thank you. That's all I have, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Powell?
So I have no comments at this time, but I would just like to echo some of the points made by both the residents in the petition, and then I know Commissioner Dexter touched on it too, how they feel that this zone change would possibly contradict the town's plan of conservation and development. So I do think that this is important to keep in mind as we're forming our opinions on this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we've heard the history of the property. It was just rezoned to industrial like 3 years ago. I'm not really in favor of rezoning properties every time the wind blows. There's a 5-year approval, I believe, in place. Our plan of conservation and development talks numerous times about the importance of industrial land and directs us to minimize the loss of land from industrial uses. It's possible this property could eventually get combined with the industrial property to the west. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but not every property is meant to be developed. There was, let me understand, who owns the property now?
The applicant does, UW Vintage 7 LLC,
And it was purchased how long ago?
within the last year.
Within the last year. Okay. Well, like I said, I'm not in favor of losing any industrial land. I think it's important that we maintain what it's currently zoned. Commissioners, anything else? Steve, you got your light on. I don't know if that means you want to talk, or, usually it means you want to talk, but, okay. Michelle, how are we at determining, do we need to have the public hearing open, or?
Well, we should probably verify this. I mean, Jeff Doolittle did run some quick numbers. It does look like we're in the 47% range possibly, but I would like to verify ownership to really make it be,
Yeah.
and come back and report back to you what petition
Okay,
percentage.
I just had a question. I understand, you purchased the property, or the property was purchased. And there was some talk during the narrative about a lack of industrial property, or not industrial, property to put housing on. But when I drove down Troy Road today, I did see a for sale sign on one of the lots to the east of this. And I'm not sure if that was a A30 lot, or it might have been a GC lot already. So, I don't think it's that uncommon that there's not property available in other areas. So that's where I'm at. So at this point, this is a little bit different for me on this one. The numbers, it seems, do corresponds that we would need a 2/3 majority for the vote. But, Michelle, is there any reason to keep the public hearing open? I mean, that would be really a deliberation type decision, correct?
I guess the only reason I would say too is because I really think it should be reported in the public so that the applicant has any comment or wants to challenge it or whatever. I think they should have an opportunity to.
Yeah.
Since we just did receive it tonight.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as a representative of the applicant, we would request that the public hearing remain open for verification of ownership. It does appear, based on the signatures, that it is more than 20%, but it is not clear at this point in time whether or not those that have signed are the, in fact, owners or representatives of those properties. And as Michelle stated, we just received this literally minutes before the public hearing started, so
Yeah.
we'd like the opportunity to review it and come back with possible additional information based on reviewing that in more detail when we have more time.
Okay. So we could do a motion to continue the public hearing to, do we have room in our next? We've got 3 public hearings on our July 13th
Yeah,
one, correct?
I'll have to talk with the applicant about some of the other applications, how they want us to proceed. They may want us to hold off on this one, have other one jump ahead of it. So can we just hold it open to potentially the July 13th or the July 27th meeting, depending on the schedule?
I move we continue the public hearing to the next available meeting, which is either July 13th or July 27th.
Perfect.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of continuing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, thank you. Okay, now, this next one gets a little sticky because,
The next one certainly depends on action on the first one.
yeah, I don't see how we can move forward with the second one without it actually being, because it's a special exception, and it's not to the industrial zone.
Correct, yeah. As the representative of the applicant, again, Ben Wheeler from Design Professionals, we concur with that. It does not make sense to open that public hearing at this time, or do you have to open it and
No,
continue?
we can
Okay.
continue.
Yeah, so we're agreeable with that.
We can just postpone it at this point.
Okay. Do we need a motion for that?
No, if we're just postponing it, we're good to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and our third public hearing tonight has been postponed, so that does complete our public hearings for the evening. So at this time, I can open up the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning of Town South Windsor for Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021. Our first item on our agenda is public participation. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on something that is not on our agenda tonight? Now is the time. Please approach the podium. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move right into our new business. I'll call application 21-26P, Unitex. Do we have someone to represent the applicant? Is it? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, plus we have our,
You have the plans as well.
just,
Hello, it's a pleasure to be back here in person.
if you could, please, with the mask, if you could speak into the microphone and, yeah. just-
It's hard to tell how you sound.
That's
Is that better?
much better like
Okay.
that. Thank you very much.
Okay. I am Suzanne Choate from Design Professionals, registered professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. With me here today for this application is, I have Rob Potak, the owner of Unitex. I have John Onofrio, the chief engineer, and Jeff Morris, the plant manager.
Okay.
Also joining me tonight is Glenn Martin from Design Professionals, registered landscape architect. And we are here to present the site plan application for Unitex parking lot. It is located at 150 South Satellite Road, across the street from their existing building, which is 145 South Satellite Road. They are proposing to construct a 49-space parking lot with appropriate stormwater management, landscaping, and lighting. Our initial submission included 50 spaces, but was revised to allow some space for a pedestrian connection. So we changed the plan a little bit from the original submission showing a walkway from this parking lot across the street. I'm gonna flip that would be on the site plan. I'm gonna flip the
We do have a portable microphone.
mobile mic. I feel like I'm doing karaoke or something. Okay, so that is the individual site. So the last plan I had up there showed where it was located on South Satellite Road, which is among some empty industrial lots. Again, it is across the street from their existing location. You might be able to see in the display from, or on your plan, we added a crosswalk and a sidewalk on 145 South Satellite so that people can pass safely from the new parking lot to the building.
Okay.
I did realize that I do need to add a couple of signs on South Satellite Road, crosswalk warning sign and a crosswalk sign, so I'll do that in the final plans. Unitex generally operates, and I can be corrected if I'm wrong, from 6 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. We are not proposing a sign on the property at this time, like a Unitex sign. The parking lot was designed to drain by sheet flow across the pavement to leak-offs on either side. The town engineer has asked us to make it a little bit simpler and sheet flow directly to a stone strip along the lower edge of the parking lot, removing bituminous curbing. And we agree to that. It is not shown on the revised plans, but we do agree to that comment. The site was designed, the stormwater basin, stormwater quality basin was designed to match the 2, 10, 25, 50, and 100-year storms as required by the regulations. We are providing well over the required water quality volume based on the 2004 Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual. The basin will overflow to the existing wetland to the west and or through the soil. A 6-inch underdrain below the basin is proposed as a safeguard to fully drain the basin between storms or after a storm. And again, the town engineer has requested some further information be added to the plans so that coordination can be done when this road is reconstructed very soon this summer. My understanding is the road will be narrowed the width will be actually narrowed. So again, we're happy to coordinate our connection of the underdrains. It's not a problem. The erosion control devices used on site are silt fence and inlet protection, and they are based on the 2002 sedimentation and erosion control guidelines. I will turn over the presentation to Glenn Martin, who will discuss the landscaping and lighting, and then we'll entertain any questions that you have.
Again, Glenn Martin from Design Professionals, licensed landscape architect. And we're proposing trees and shrubs in the parking lot and the landscape islands. And the landscape islands are greater than 10% of the parking area as required by the zoning regulations. And to the south, we're also proposing an evergreen screen of rhododendron, which would be adjacent to the 50-foot buffer to the south. The detention basin will be seeded with a native seed mix, which includes flowers and grasses, and that will help stabilize the detention basin. For lighting, we're proposing two 20-foot high light poles with modern LED fixtures. The fixtures will be full cutoff fixtures and will light the parking lot in a safe manner. And basically, in conclusion, we believe the proposed development is appropriate for the site and meets the zoning regulations. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to turn to our town staff, our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
Thank you. This is a request for site plan approval for off-site parking at 150 South Satellite Road in the industrial zone. This is in accordance with section 6.4.7. This is a parking lot for the employees of the Unitex business located at 145 South Satellite Road. Criteria for off-site parking under 647C include the building the parking lot serves must be within 600 feet of the lot. A waiver is required from the commission when off-site parking lot requires crossing of a public street to the primary facility. The applicant must demonstrate there is no other practical and feasible solution that the proposed road crossing does not create an unsafe condition. This application is in response to address an existing parking problem that has actually existed on site for many years. The applicant, we did approach the applicant when the town was redoing South Satellite and had a very good conversation which resulted in this application solving a problem that, like I said, has been there for many years, so we really appreciate the applicant's cooperation in this application here. They are adding a sidewalk when you cross over to the building so people can get to the building. There is also a sidewalk along the property frontage. This is actually a piece of a sidewalk that is required from the subdivision that was done many years ago. So South Satellite on that south side will have a sidewalk the entire length, and this is just one section of it. As indicated, the parking lot is for 49 spaces. Proposed impervious coverage is just under 30%. We do allow up to 65%. Interior landscaping is 10.4%, 10% is required. They are proposing very low intensity lighting, full cutoff fixtures. No light spillover is proposed at the residential site boundary to the south. The commission may want to see if the applicant can maybe turn the lights down once the close of business, if that's appropriate. It is the multifamily development to the immediate south of this property. There's a buffer requirement as this lot is adjacent to the multifamily. The plan does show a 50-foot buffer area, really to remain untouched. It is primarily deciduous trees when they're out there, so they have proposed a row of evergreens to supplement that at the south end of the parking field. There are regulated wetlands on the site. Wetlands did grant approval on June 2nd with no unusual approval conditions, but the standard bond's $15,000 for erosion sedimentation, for stormwater controls, and $20,000 for erosion sedimentation controls. If this application is approved, the planning department has no additional modifications to request. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As was stated, I suggested the curb on the west side of the proposed parking lot be eliminated, so water can sheet flow off the pavement with a 2-foot stone strip, which will catch any debris, any pollutants in that stormwater runoff. Asked for some more information on the proposed under-drain pipe that would tie into, is shown tying into an existing catch basin. That catch basin will be shifted north in South Satellite Road. We just want to make sure we plan for that. And as was mentioned, just for the Commission's information, the town is in the process of repaving South Satellite Road. That'll be done in July or August. And we're proposing to narrow the road to 30 feet. The road width now is about 36 feet, plus or minus, which is more than our standard industrial road any place. So we're going to narrow it to 30 feet and remove some pavement on the south side of the road. And that's all we have.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will turn to commissioners. I'll start with Commissioner Powell.
I have no comments at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bernstein.
No questions or comments, thank you.
Commissioner Wagner.
Okay, so you are building a new parking lot with 49 spaces in it. I'm opening up our recently passed,
Steve, make sure you talk to the microphone.
okay. You're building a new parking lot with 49 spaces, and I just opened up our electric vehicle charging requirements. And a lot of this size, you're required to have 3%, 10% EV ready, with 3% actually installed electric vehicle chargers. So I'm wondering how you're planning to address that question.
Oh, it's still on. So my understanding, I don't have the regulation right in front of me, is that it kicks in at 50 spaces.
That's only if you're rehabbing an existing parking lot. That's my reading of that first paragraph.
Okay. If you'll give me a minute, I will answer your question in a moment.
So it's paragraph 6.4.10 or section is the...
Actually, if you read the first sentence, Steve, under A, I think you'll find that this may qualify as, it says, following to, expansion of parking spaces of existing property with 50 or more spaces. I think they're coming in at 49, so they don't meet that criteria of 50.
Well, I guess the question is whether this is an expansion or a new lot, since it's across the street.
I look at it as an expansion to the existing business because it's required to make the business function. I mean, they had an off-site requirement for parking in their approvals.
Okay.
But it's up to you and how, this is kind of the first time we've had this situation, obviously, to
Yeah,
talk
and
about.
certainly not something we anticipated when we were writing this regulation.
Well, when they showed 50 spaces, I asked for where they were.
Devil's in the detail.
Well, the other thing we allow is for you to provide level 1 charging, which is basically a 120 volt plug at your streetlights. That might be a nice accommodation where someone coming to work can plug their vehicle in. It's not as fast as the level 2 charging, but the level 1 basically uses the electricity in your street light. You're paying for that electricity anyway, so you'd be giving basically free charging to somebody, a worker who's parks it next to the traffic light and just plugs into the base there.
Okay. give me just one moment, if you don't mind. If we can just move on, and I'll come back to your question, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn to Commissioner Dexter.
I'm just curious, how many employees Unitex has?
Would you please stand and address that? I forgot his name.
Is it to me again? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Employees does Unitex have?
How many employees?
Yeah, just curious. Okay, so 50 is not.
That was 85, just so that
49
was
is not
heard on the mic.
unreasonable. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Flagg.
I was looking at the drawing. Are there handicap spots in this new parking lot up at the front? I didn't notice them.
I'm sorry, I did intend to mention, we are restriping spaces on the unit across the street so that they're close to the building. So not in this lot, but there are new spaces, new handicap spaces across the street.
Okay. Second question is, you said your operating hours are 6 to 4:30, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And you have lighting poles that are 20 feet high in there. Is that for people that are working overtime, or did you plan at some time in the future to add a second shift or something like that?
so the light poles are 25 feet, but it is dark sometimes at 6 a.m. I know it's not now, but, and we do want some security lighting also. Did somebody mention the dimmable? Can I answer that now? Is that okay? The dimmable lights?
Sure.
We're amenable to adding the dimmable feature for overnight and just the full lighting during working hours.
Okay. All right. And it shows on the drawing, you did provide a crosswalk going across, right?
Correct. We're providing a sidewalk
Yeah.
and crosswalk.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Commissioner LeBlanc?
Hi, so, one question I have regarding the lighting as well, just to touch on Commissioner Flagg's comments there. I realize that you have your light
Mike, maybe
poles that are
tilt your
25 feet in
microphone
the...
down just a touch. Tilt it down just a little.
Okay.
Or-
Yeah, they're 25 feet high, so the projection of light is pretty good through the lot, but you have a walkway that goes off to the, well, looking at the page, it's to the upper left of the lot heading towards the road. You have a crosswalk that goes over towards the building. Is that passageway lit, or are you relying on the street lighting out there, or is that safe enough for people to cross? Because you might get trip and falls out there if they come
Right,
after
the street-
dark or before sunrise.
There is street lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I believe there is street lighting out there which would cover that lighting of the sidewalk. Yeah, the town street lighting. So
Okay.
that would provide light on that sidewalk crossing the road.
All right. Because during the wintertime, when you have, short daylight and you have slippery conditions and all that, sometimes I just notice in dealing with infrastructure projects during the day that you do get slip and trip and falls when there's not enough lighting along that route back to your car. Just want to bring that up. But if you have it covered, we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pointed out, just wanted to mention on the lighting.
Step closer, please.
Sorry, Rob Potak,
And maybe tilt it up a little.
all right.
Yeah.
Rob Potak, is that better?
Yeah, a little louder would be
Okay.
appreciated.
Just one point on the lighting, the existing building has lighting on it as well. So we're adding the two lights in the parking lot with the street lighting, and our existing building has lighting projecting out.
Okay, and just while you're there,
Thank you.
Mike, are you all set?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I didn't mean to cut you off. On the lighting, as well as dimmable, there is, I believe, the option where you could, if there's motion, to have the lights come on. And you might want that more in your own parking lot versus the other one, I'm not sure, but, you know, the employees might appreciate it if it was motion also. Okay,
Yes, that was the intention as well. The motion sense dimmable,
okay.
yeah.
How many parking spaces in the existing building? 20? 25? Okay. So this will bring it right up to about the amount of your employees. Some of them probably come by bus or get picked up also.
Well, and that's, the head count I gave you was total employees, but we operate 7 days a week, so it's not 85 on site at all times.
Okay, okay, good. So Jeff, in removing the curb, does that also provide for like a snow shelf when they're plowing the lot?
Yes, it'll actually provide a larger snow shelf than what is shown.
Okay, good. I gotta ask where your handicap spaces are currently. Please step forward. We do? All the way to the microphone, please.
John Onofrio, Chief Engineer, there's two up front in the existing building, right outside the door. They're not marked at the moment, but when we restripe, we're gonna mark them.
Okay, just, could you approach
Sure.
and watch the step over here? Just looking at the plan here, I'm saying it's probably these two spaces?
Correct. There's a crosshatch that I put in here to signalate these are the two, but we just never did the symbol.
Okay.
But we're going to do that.
You do realize there are ADA requirements, correct?
And when we redo this sidewalk,
Yeah,
we will definitely take care of that ADA requirement. The door is ADA, this isn't.
okay. Okay. Let's get this going and, Jeff, 36-foot wide road narrowing down to 30. 30's still a decent size.
Yes,
But,
most of the industrial roads in town are 30 feet.
Okay.
All of them, all the other roads are 30 feet.
So like Nutmeg Road South, Nutmeg Road North, they're all 30 feet?
Chapel Road, yep.
Okay. Because I do like that road, how wide it is. It's 36 all the way up to Route 5?
No, it gets wider out by Route 5, yes.
Really?
It was, remember, well, I don't know if you remember. So in my research, South Satellite Road was built as an entrance to Parkview Center, which was supposed to be a grand industrial park
Okay,
in that area that was obviously never built.
right.
But that was the main entrance. It was going to be the main entrance to this industrial park.
Okay. All right. I got to ask, is the property that this application for leased or purchased?
It will be purchased. Currently, we're under negotiations on the purchase agreement, but we will own it.
Okay, so you will own it, because I had the question if it was going to be leased, what happens? But if you're purchasing it, great. Okay. I don't have anything else. Commissioners, any other questions? No? Staff? Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Wagner.
All right. I guess I'm trying to imagine being an employee, coming out of the building, having to cross the street into a lot, and let's say they happen to be there off hours, and you got only a motion detector to turn on the lights. Motion detectors really don't hit that soon, but you know, if it was right outside the building, it would probably work pretty well. I'm a little worried about having someone walking across the street to a dark parking lot and hoping the motion detector actually turns on the lights for me. So I would, you know, want to make sure we're always safe for someone, I don't care what hour they're coming out of the building, to be able to get into that lot and not be a little bit frightened about what they're going into.
I'll address a portion of that. The street is a cul-de-sac, and I think there's two other properties, there's only a couple of properties past it, so it is not a busy, high velocity road. But if you would like to, if you could address the security for me, the security of the off-hours employees or.
I mean, as I stated,
If you could, for the record, your name, just so our
Sure.
staff can.
Rob Potak. I mean, as I stated before, the building has lights on it. There'll be street lights on, and the lights we intend to install will be on with, the dimmer available, but they'll be on, when our employees are coming and leaving, and then they really will just dim really off hours at nighttime. I think we believe after 10 o'clock at night, but all our employees will be gone by then. So when any employee is leaving, even if they're leaving a little later than normal, the lights will be on to provide for that safety aspect.
So you probably have them on from like 5 a.m. till, say, 6 or 8 or later?
10 p.m. would be preferred,
Okay, and
just
then,
in the odd case that someone is there late. To dim them at 10 p.m.
okay.
I mean, I'm thinking, and it's really up to you, but I'd be much happier with a dimmed light than turning everything off all the time, or at least a few very dim lights, just to give someone an assurance that there isn't someone lurking out next to their car,
Yes, they'll be dimmed overnight, yeah.
Okay. That it, Steve?
Yeah.
Commissioner Bernstein? Anything? Okay. All right. Staff, anything else?
We didn't hear an answer about the level 1 charging yet.
Can you just clarify what the level 1 charging, I understand what level 1 is with the voltage, but what's the requirement with how many charging ports?
Basically, you're allowed to put, an outdoor rated plug at the base of a street light. Somebody who has an electric vehicle would have the necessary plug to run from the car to just go into that outlet. So level 1 is just a plain old, I think it's a 20 amp circuit with a 120 volt. It's like the same plug you'd plug your microwave into. So it's very simple.
I think he's asking how many, if,
I'll leave that up to you also.
I guess, is there?
No numerical requirement. I'm really just suggesting that since you very carefully picked 49 parking spaces, that you provide some opportunity for electric vehicle charging. And you can get a lot done on, in a shift with a car parked at that with a 120 volt plug.
So there's not I'm not asking, is it?
It doesn't have like a.
There's not a zoning requirement of a certain amount. I'm not opposed to doing it. I just wasn't
Yeah.
sure if there was a
It's
requirement.
not a zoning requirement. The regulations allow it, okay? They also don't come with credit card chargers or fancy charging equipment or anything else,
Yeah, I'm agreeable to that. I don't have a problem with that.
Thank you.
okay. Jeff, did you have something to add,
I
or?
think where I've seen those level 1 chargers and on light poles, I think there's 2 outlets on each pole. But check with your light pole provider and see if they can accommodate that. But I think 2 per pole would be fine.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine with us.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think a motion would be in order if someone is so willing. I see Commissioner Flagg has his light on.
Motion to approve application 21-26P Unitex parking lot. Number 1, prior to commencement of any site work, a meeting must be held with town staff. Number 2, no building permit will be issued until the final Mylars have been filed in the town clerk's office. Number 3, this application is subject to the conditions of approval of the Inland Wetlands Agency Conservation Commission, including bonds in the amount of $15,000 to ensure compliance with the erosion and sediment control measures, and $20,000 to ensure establishment of stormwater system. Number 4, a landscape bond in the amount of $5,000 is required and must be submitted prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy if work is not completed. Number 5, all bonds must be in one of the forms described in the enclosed bond policy. Number 6, an as-built plan is required prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy per section 9.1.3 of the zoning regulations. Number 7, all plans used in the field by the developer must bear the stamp and authorized signature of the town of South Windsor. Number 8, the building street number must be included on the final plan. Number 9, pavement markings must be maintained in good condition throughout the site drives and parking areas. Number 10, all freestanding signs and/or building signs require the issuance of a sign permit before they are erected. 11, a waiver has been granted to 6.4.7C to allow the off-site parking lot across the public street. 12, engineering comments dated 6/22/21 must be incorporated into the final plans.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions, comments? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Good luck. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Maybe pretty soon we won't be wearing these.
Okay. Our next item on our agenda is Connecticut General Statute, referral 8-24 for the sale of 725 Sullivan Avenue. I believe our town manager, Michael Maniscalco, is here. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the commission. It's a pleasure to be here in front of all of you tonight, and thank you for taking your time to review all this important business. Just to kind of go over how we got to where we are today, we have had a couple conversations at the council level about possibly putting together RFPs, possibly selling properties, did some research into different properties, because the town charter requires that any property with a real value over $25,000 is required to go to a referendum for a referendum approval. Through doing some research and looking, there are some properties in the town that do have that approval. Unfortunately, 725 Sullivan Avenue doesn't. As a result, you know, we had kind of sat in the back seat with that and really didn't move it forward with anything related to that. We haven't had a chance due to the pandemic to actually move forward with any of the others at this point either, but we do have plans to try to do something with those in the future. About 6 months ago, we were approached by a individual through a real estate agent interested in this piece of property. Specifically, they're interested in building a medical office building on that location for their headquarters. I believe they own a number of different locations throughout the state, and they want to build their headquarter office building in this location. They made an initial offer to the town. Town council went and got an appraisal for the property. The appraisal came back a little higher than their initial offer. We went back to them and said, this is what the appraisal is, and they met that appraised price. And we put together a purchase and sale agreement for $265,000. That agreement's been approved, put in place, and now we're going through the processes of getting 824 for all of you. The plan is that it'll be a ballot question in the November election, and we'll see where it goes from there. Essentially, I think Michelle and Jeff provided to you, excuse me, I believe there's a map in front of you as well as a quick cut sheet on the property, just because kind of give you an idea of what this looks like, I believe this was actually put together quite a while ago. The property was originally cut off and subdivided at some point historically with the intention of actually using it for economic development. The uses fits within the plan of conservation development, or the proposed use fits within the plan of conservation development. It is the plan of what the town wants to use it for. The parcel itself is about 2.5 acres, a little more than that. It's got about 371 feet of frontage. Just for frame of reference, it's next to the fire department, as well as the Connecticut Valley Brewing on the other side. And I think I've covered just about everything for you that you might need to know at this point. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, or
Okay.
go from there.
At this time, we'll turn to our town staff, our Director of Planning, Michelle Leip.
Thank you. I did just provide with you the subdivision plan. At the time when the town did purchase this property, they subdivided it to create what is now where the fire station is. And we also sold where the brewery property, that was also part of this 4-lot subdivision at the time. So this is a corner lot that was created. This commission did put 2 requirements on there just for your information for when it did go into development. The sidewalk that's along Sullivan Ave, the pathway would be continued on this property, as well as under our access management regulations, any access to this property would be coming off of West Road. So those would be 2 development things that we would be looking for with any site plan to come in for use on this property. But the intent was at the time of the subdivision it would be sold for economic development. That was the thinking. There is a lot, just so you know too, that is behind the brewery. It's kind of hard to see on that small map. That actually has its frontage where there's floodplain, but there is an access easement to come through the brewery. So there's still a 1-acre developable land piece there that the town owns besides this corner piece.
Okay.
And that's really it.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you. I have no additional comments on this application.
Okay. Then I will turn to commissioners. Commissioner LeBlanc.
It's a great lot, and I think it's a great idea to sell it off, and certainly it's a high visibility lot, and that's a win-win for the town. No question about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Flagg.
Yeah, isn't that lot being used now by, for baseball, soccer and stuff like that?
So there is a sports lot, or there's a lot that's being used across the street from there for soccer and other things, but not this lot, no.
Okay.
I think if anything, it might randomly be used for parking for the fire department, possibly, but not on a regular basis, that's for sure.
All right. Could it be used for something like that? I mean, have you approached Little League or somebody like that to see if they might want to use it for a ball field?
Well, we haven't had any conversations about using it for a ball field anywhere. I mean, the specific purpose of this was to use it for economic development. I actually had some conversations with the town attorney about it at the time, and she said the town council and the town itself has a fiduciary responsibility to try to, if you were going to sell it, to try to sell it for its highest best use. So I think when you compare from a tax basis, using it for a ball field versus using it for a medical office building, I think that it kind of outweighs it in that scenario, so.
Or one of the other uses I was thinking of is the garden lots that they've opened up are filling up very, very fast. Have you thought about using it for that too?
Yeah, we haven't had that conversation either, although I don't believe there's any water out there. They'd have to probably tap into the water at the firehouse, but we haven't had that conversation because this was really directed for economic development purposes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Dexter.
I don't really have anything, earth-shattering to say. I'm glad we had the forethought for the entrance off West. And the sidewalk, of course. We're all about the sidewalks. I know that brewery overflow parking, I don't know, we gotta do something with that brewery, Michelle, in the parking. They're all over the place, and I know they've inched over into this parcel. I mean, I don't care, but not right. I think it's a great use for what we wanna do with it, and they would come in with their own site plan once the referendum's approved, right?
That's
Of
correct.
course.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you. I'm very pleased to see this land getting sold. I have a couple of questions. I understand the brewery had an option for one of these pieces of land, and how's that?
Yeah, so at the time that the brewery was being developed, they had negotiated an option early on. I want to say it was 2014, 2015, somewhere around that time frame. The option was for 2 years, and that option had expired. And then they came forward and they asked to extend it, in which case it was extended, I believe, for another 2 years. But then that had expired again. There had been conversations with my predecessor about possibly doing an extension, but those conversations never came to fruition, and an actual extension was never agreed upon. So as a result, there is no first option actually legitimately there.
Okay, so there are two real small pieces here, the one in back which you mentioned, and then there's another one actually out on Sullivan Avenue. It almost seems impossible to develop anything there, but I'm wondering what the thoughts are about that.
So correct. So the one in the back, I've had the conversation with the brewery because part of what they were talking about was possibly some parking. Although the conversation changed too, they wanted to do expansions and all kinds of other things that I don't know how legitimate they really were. But there were some conversations about wanting to do parking, and I believe that piece in the back could probably do that very well for them. The piece in the front, of course, is more wetlands to get them the frontage that they need. So I think to do anything on that piece is going to be next to impossible.
Okay, thank you, but I think it's a really great idea. I plan to vote for it.
Commissioner Bernstein?
Just so I'm clear on this, so the prospective buyer plan is to put a medical headquarter building?
It's a medical office building that their plan is to use it as their headquarters as well as for services as well. So it won't just be administrative offices, it'll be a little bit of everything, it seems like.
And I see 4 lots, so of those, which would the medical building or medical office sit on?
So this one down here in the corner,
Right.
this is where your firehouse is. This one right here is where the brewery is.
Got it.
This facility would sit right in this one,
Okay.
up in the corner.
So lot number 2.
That's right, that is
Thank
lot
you.
number 2. It's too small, I can't read it.
That's all. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Powell?
I have no comments at this time, thank you.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Maniscalco, I know the brewery preceded your employment with the town, correct?
Oh, correct.
Yeah. And Michelle, maybe you have an understanding, but, you know, as far as, say, transparency and how the projects are decided, do you know if there was ever an RFP request for proposals sent out? I mean, was it an open process or?
You mean for the development of the brewery?
Correct.
So the conversation I had with my predecessor is there was not an RFP put together for that property for the development of the brewery. My understanding is there was a negotiation between the owner and the manager at the time that basically came to an agreement on the price for the property. I believe he got a pretty good deal on it, and as a result of that, he was not eligible for a tax abatement. But I do not believe there was an RFP put together for it.
Okay. And currently for this property, what I'm hearing is somebody approached the town and it started from that. So there's never been like an RFP for this site either?
No.
And I hope you understand, and I'm not trying to be critical, but when that kind of lacks transparency for any other business in town who might have wanted to move to Sullivan Avenue and was not afforded the opportunity to participate in any kind of process to make an offer or bid. I hope you understand what I mean, and it's not said in, or it's not meant to be said in a way that's derogatory. It's just, it doesn't seem like that's how the town should be offering properties. You know, like, say we own some land someplace, and it just gives the opportunity for people to say, oh, he got a sweetheart deal, or I would have taken that, and I wasn't offered the opportunity. That I'm probably not going about this the right way, but I just want to say, you know, that I think it's important that the town have a process, an open process for any dealings like this in the future, that can be open to, you know, that is noticed and available to all.
Well, I would think that all of us in the room would agree, in a perfect world, that we would put together RFPs, everybody in the world would come through and put an application in, and we would get opportunities to move forward with something. In this instance, you know, we're living in the real world, and sometimes that doesn't exactly follow that process. And, you know, this was a good opportunity that came through. We brought it forward to the town council. They saw that this was a good opportunity. They reviewed it. They brought it to an appraiser who reaffirmed that to them. And that's how we got to where we are.
Yeah, because
there's a big difference between, you know, the perfect world and reality, unfortunately. And
well,
I would love to live in that world all the time, but, you know, being town manager, we don't get a lot of good, perfect things to happen all the time for us. So, best that we can with what we're given.
I think what I'm trying to say is it should be an open process. The same thing with fields. If we have open space and we're looking for farmers to utilize that, I believe there's a process there where it's put out to bid, and a farmer can bid on the land on whether they're going to utilize that land or not, correct?
You mean for actually farming any of the open space that the town owns?
Correct.
Yeah, annually we put all the property out for an RFP, and people are eligible to submit applications for that use.
Well, what I'm suggesting is any other properties that become available, that the town take that opportunity to handle it the same way.
Okay, so I think we're actually saying the same thing, because if this was a piece of property that we were looking at to dispose of at the time, we certainly would have gone through the process of putting an RFP together and moving it forward. This one was not really on my radar as something that we would do because in that manner at the time, because it hasn't had that referendum approval, and we couldn't propose it to anybody in the public as shovel-ready. Because I think all of us have to look at this. We're already almost 6 months into it. As a business owner, why would you want to make a commitment to a 6-month piece of property or more? That's a very long-term time. And people in business, time is money, and you know that's an investment that this business at least is willing to make, because they're really committed to that one spot. So
I understand that. I'm just talking transparency.
Understood.
Okay. That's about all I have. So, commissioners. This is really just if we find it favorable or if we give a favorable recommendation or if we give a negative recommendation.
I
So-
move we give a favorable recommendation to the council on the sale of 725 Sullivan Avenue.
Okay.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of giving a favorable recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We have 3 and 4 are both on hold. We have bonds in front of us. Subdivision for Kilkenny Heights. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Mikey, you got him? I can't find any.
Keith, here's one right here, if you'd like. Okay. Okay, before we get into a motion, I'm just going to read a letter. It's addressed to Michelle Lipe regarding Kilkenny Heights 2 application, which is the one that we're here on. Dear Michelle and Bart, I'm writing you today to request that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept a surety bond to file the Mylars and the town land records to comply with the subdivision approvals and state statutes in lieu of a letter of credit. We ask this because our own needs to not start the project until June of 2022 due to shortage of materials and our present workload. In addition, if accepting, we expect that part of this approval will state that we cannot start construction until we post a letter of credit from a qualified lender, along with our willingness to place language on the land records for us not to be able to sell any lots. We hope you find this request reasonable under these unusual times, and as always, appreciate the commission considering our request. Sincerely, Rob Manarino, Manarino Builders, Inc. Okay, so we have a subdivision bond. Engineering recommends a bond amount of $920,000 for public improvements associated with application 20-03P. Okay. Are these two different? Because one's 20-02P.
It should be a 02P.
They should both be
It's the same, it's Kilkenny Heights, yes.
02P.
Yeah.
Okay,
Or 3, I gotta figure out.
okay.
Either Rob's or I don't know.
So, commissioners, does everybody understand what's going on, that they,
Maybe I can summarize for you. Typically, when you have a subdivision approved, you have 270 days to file the Mylar on the land records, okay? To file the Mylar on the land records, you have to post your subdivision bond. The subdivision bond is to ensure that the town doesn't get stuck without money in a road not built out there, all right? That's the purpose of the subdivision bond. Mr. Manarino is requesting that he be allowed to post a surety bond. You currently have a policy that requires either a letter of credit or a cash bond be submitted. And the reason for this is surety bonds are difficult to collect on. They require you getting attorneys involved. A letter of credit's much easier. You go to the bank and you collect on it. What he's suggesting is he put a surety bond in place because he has to legally file his Mylars to keep his approval active. However, he doesn't intend on starting construction until next spring, and before he actually starts construction, he would replace that surety bond with a letter of credit. And he would also file something on the land record stating he would not sell any lots over this period of time. The town is on the hook when a developer sells lots and doesn't build the road. That's why we bond it. So if he's not going to sell any lots, in theory, we shouldn't have to collect on a surety bond. So it is one approach you have in the past granted. Redland Brick is who I can think of, you've allowed a surety bond to be posted in lieu of a letter of credit. So there is times in the past where you have allowed it.
Okay.
And that's what this request is about. So it would be something that next spring, if you were to allow it, Jeff would review the bond estimate again next spring to make sure it was still good numbers. And at that time, he would post a letter of credit.
Okay. So at this time, are we looking for a motion that they be allowed to file a surety
To
bond?
establish the bond, correct, yep.
Okay. So commissioners, I see Commissioner Dexter has her light on.
I do. So I make a motion that we allow Manorino Brothers to post a surety bond in place of the regular bonds.
Letter of credit.
Letter of credit, in the amount of $920,000 for public improvements associated with application 20-02P Kilkenny Heights subdivision. And might I just add that, you know, if this had been a contractor that we didn't know and couldn't trust, I don't know if I would approve this, but I think this is okay.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Any
Yes.
discussion? Commissioner Bernstein.
So I'm going to use this as a learning experience. It feels to me like this is an issue that should be addressed by a town attorney as opposed to planning and zoning.
You have a policy, you guys have a policy, a surety policy. You are the ones that have decided that only a letter of credit or a cash bond is what's acceptable. Other towns allow surety bonds. So, you know, from a bonding perspective, surety bonds are an acceptable form of bonding. It's just that you've chosen not to allow that in this town, and it goes back to something that happened in the 90s, to be honest with you. It's when we couldn't collect on one. So, we can certainly refer to the town attorney, but again, it's not that we're not collecting surety before we file a Mylar, which is what I think the town's obligation is to do to ensure that we could build a road if it were ever necessary. But if you want to refer to the town attorney for a comment, I can certainly do that.
Well, I'm not suggesting, I don't know what I'm suggesting, I'm just trying to learn here. It seems like a fairly significant issue, and I'm trying to wrap my head around protocol. So it sounds like this is something that is in the purview of planning and zoning and has always
think it
been,
is within
so
your
this
purview
is
to
not
do this.
unusual.
Yeah, it is within, it's your policy, so I think you can make an exception to your policy in a circumstance. Like I said,
Okay.
you've done it in the past under you know, it's a rare circumstance. This is, typically a developer goes right into constructing homes. This is a situation where he's waiting a year to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
No,
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Powell? Okay. All right. Commissioner Flagg. And just for the commissioners, sometimes when I look out through these plexiglass, like I see 4 or 5 different lights on this way. I see 3 on this way, and sometimes it's just my light. So it's like, it's crazy. And hopefully these will be gone soon, but I'm sorry, Commissioner Flagg.
Michelle, I guess my question is, between the two bonds, if there's a failure here by the applicant, the town will still get its money, just in a different way, but
That's
it's-
correct. There
it's-
still
it's-
is protection.
It's
yeah.
just an easier thing for the applicant, I think, correct?
Correct, and it's easier for the town to have a letter of credit.
Right,
So
right,
that's why we
right,
do it when
Right.
it's.
It's just making it easier for him, but we will still get the money in case it ever fails,
Correct, and before he starts the construction, he's going to make a commitment to swap it out to a letter
Right,
of credit, which is
right.
when we really would
Yeah.
be most concerned about it, when he goes into construction.
Okay, that's all I had, thanks.
Okay. Any, Commissioner, Commissioner Wagner?
Okay, and it's not my reflection you're looking at.
Well, there's one right in front, right here.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. So, does the motion we have include all of the conditions, all the promises he's made in this letter or should we amend it to include, like he promised not to, I guess he can sell lots, but he can't build anything, or what are the restrictions he's promising, and, do we have the right
He's
motion?
indicating he will not sell any lots, and he'll put something on the land records to that effect. So you could
do
make
we-
that a
maybe we
condition
should
of
amend the
accepting the
motion.
surety bond, make that a condition of accepting the surety bond,
Yeah.
and that he has to post a letter of credit prior to selling lots.
Yeah, I'd like that to be included if the,
So we're gonna amend the subdivision bond to say
The surety bond too.
that it's gonna be a surety bond, and that, all of his, promises to put things on the land record to that effect, should be part of the approval conditions.
Right, so, there'll be a note put on the town land records that no properties will be sold until a letter of credit is provided. That sound about accurate?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, Bill, you seconded that, right? You accept that? Okay. All right, any other questions, comments? You're all set?
Okay.
Light off? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, our next item of business is minutes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. There is an Inland Wetlands Agency Conservation Commission bond. So, does everybody have that paper? Would someone like to make a motion? Please.
Move approve, application 18-36P, Philip Smith School, erosion and sedimentation. Original amount 15,000, we're gonna reduce it by 15,000, leaving a balance of 0. And the same application, 1836P, Philip Smith School, stormwater, 25,000, reducing 25,000, also leaving a balance of 0.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Jeff, I take it these are both all set for this Philip R. Smith School?
Yeah, Jeff Folger reviewed both of those sites again today for me and recommended it, yep.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of these bond reductions, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Okay. We have minutes of 5:25. I had some corrections, and they're rather lengthy, so I'm thinking, I'd like to get them to you, and then we can approve or go over these minutes next meeting. So I'd like to just hold off on those minutes for now. Okay, we have old business, Michelle. Any old business you wanna?
No, we don't have any old business.
Okay, fair enough. We received a couple applications, other business, correspondence, reports. We did have a letter. Does everybody have it regarding the June 11th, 2021 letter?
I'm not sure it was distributed to everybody. It went to, I think it was addressed to you, so you may be the only recipient at this point.
Really?
Sorry about that.
Oh, okay, yeah, and I was CC'd at the end. And would you like to read it? or- Okay. Thank you.
Okay, this is a letter from Catherine Kerrigan to Michael Frisbee.
Yeah.
Dear Mr. Frisbee, I understand through conversations with Ginny Macro, who is the current chair of the South Windsor Historic District Commission, that you are interested in developing a tract of land on the corner of Sullivan Ave and John Fitch Boulevard. It appears that your plans include a new 24-hour diesel gas station for trucks, deli sandwiches in a convenience shop, and an ice cream parlor in the Increase Clap Schweer house listed on the State Registry of Historic Homes. Current ownership unclear. I'm writing to let you know that since becoming aware of these plans, I have met with my neighbors here in East Windsor Hill and spoken to a number of town officials and interested citizens. We are united in our opposition to your plan and respectfully ask that you reconsider it. There are a number of commercial properties along John Fitch Boulevard available for development, many of them offering opportunities to repurpose vacated buildings. We urge you to work with the town to investigate them. We are a tiny community within a larger town, with properties owned by people dedicated to preserving their homes in perpetuity for the long-term benefit of South Windsor residents, the state of Connecticut, and an even broader national historical community. We do this at significant personal and monetary sacrifice, and sadly without any direct help from our town or the state. I am a 40-year resident of South Windsor's historical district, live within yards of both John Fitch Boulevard and the proposed development site. In the past 10 years, my neighbors and I have seen East Windsor Hill buffeted by a significant increase in truck volume due to the construction of multiple distribution centers on or just off of Sullivan Ave. The result has been both a dramatic 24/7 increase in the number of trucks on the two roads closest to our neighborhood, and a stunning increase in the noise levels generated by those trucks. We are understandably gun shy. A diesel truck fueling station with its attendant activity, noise, and lighting would be intolerable. And perhaps most importantly, we believe that the introduction of any kind of a fuel station in the vicinity of the historic district is simply unacceptable. Sincerely, Catherine H. Kerrigan.
Okay, I just wanted to let the commission know that we did receive that letter. We do not have an application yet, but just for the record, and we'll see what happens in the future. Okay, any other business?
Just want to make sure the commission's aware, we did leave you a copy of the lawsuit that we received. I think I sent it to you electronically last Friday. I will be meeting with the town attorney tomorrow, and I'll advise you after that. I'm sure she'll want to have an executive session, probably for our next meeting, so keep you posted on that.
Okay.
Yeah, Bart, is it an option to accept the changes to the minutes by unanimous consent?
It will be once the minutes are changed.
Okay.
Okay. Having said all that, a motion to adjourn would be in order. Do we have a second? Motion made and seconded. All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Those opposed, motion unanimously approved. Thank you, everybody.